Hi, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. Um, if this is your first time joining us or you've forgotten, Cafe Oleh with Nefesh Benefesh is your chance to learn all the everyday Hebrew we need in Israel to succeed, whether that's reading and paying your bills, going grocery shopping and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, flirting, dating, job interviewing, complaining, all the everyday things you do in your native language in your country of origin, but in Israel in modern Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. If there are any topics that we haven't covered, or you'd like us to review, or you just want to say hi, you're welcome to be in touch with us anytime. If you're joining us live on Zoom, you can write in the chat window now any of those things. If you are joining us via recording on YouTube, or you just forget and want to reach us at another time, email us at hebrew@nbn.org.il. That's hebrew@nbn.org.il. You should also go to youtube.com to see all of our previous lessons. Just go to YouTube, type in Cafe Oleh or Nefesh B'Nefesh. You'll see a playlist of all of our previous lessons. You can watch them on demand at your leisure, convenience, whether you miss a class, you want to review a class, as well as get these spreadsheets associated with each class. The vocabulary attached will be there as well. Also, because this is the situation we're in now, if you are joining us from Israel and the siren goes off, please, your safety is more important than joining us here live. Please seek adequate shelter according to where you live in Israel. By now, you should know how much time you have and where your safe protected space is. Please seek that. We'll be here. The class will be recorded. If we need to stop, we will, but we'll always be recorded. Your safety is more important than joining us here. Final little bit of news, housekeeping rather. If you have questions about the topic at hand that we're discussing right in this class, please write it in the Q&A. If you have questions about anything else, please put it in the chat. The chat should now be enabled, so you can reach us there as you would like. Okay, but the chat is there for any other questions, concerns, comments that don't relate to this class. Q&A is just for this class, as I'll be reviewing it towards the end of class. So for the last several weeks, we've been talking about the war, understandably, how to keep ourselves safe, how to express how we're feeling about things, how to stick to a schedule, how to laugh, find times to laugh, and all this, all the everyday, coping mechanisms that we have in our disposal in Israeli society, but also as, human beings. Today, we're going to do a class that is completely disconnected from the war, trying to find some sense of shigra, as we talked about the other day, routine, and hilgel, habit. Those are all words we've talked about in the last few weeks. Today, we're going to talk about a class no less important than any of those things, really getting back to everyday Hebrew and helping you communicate, whether you are already in Israel, you are planning to be in Israel, or you're just interested in learning Hebrew. We welcome you all here. So with that, today we're going to talk about a topic we've actually covered in the past, and we've covered it in a couple different contexts. Today, we're going to do it in the context as a review of all the different ways we can create new words. We've talked about this a lot in terms of forms. We've talked about this in terms of the shoresh, the root of each word. But today we're going to try as much as possible do a compendium of all the different ways you can create new words in Hebrew, or at the very least the reverse, recognize when a word is quote unquote made up, or it's a new word that's been created, both so that you can recognize when words don't fit what you've learned in pre-existing formal education with Hebrew, or you want to create a new word. One of the joys of modern Hebrew is not just creating words out of our existing context of the Hebrew language for thousands of years and the Hebrew grammar, which allows for new words to be created, but also using the language as a living language and hearing how people use it and adapt it and innovate with it. And so we're going to do that today, try to cover it as comprehensively as possible, so at least you can recognize, if not create, new words yourself. So let's get to it today. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so as always, you are welcome to screenshot our vocab list, old school pen and paper. I love all of our connection, if not dependence on modern technology, but we are all school children at some point who had to write things on paper um, from a either chalkboard or a dry erase board. Let's maybe channel that as well. But as always, you'll get a recording of this video as well as a PDF of this spreadsheet. So don't worry if you can't write it down. You can just follow along today and review the class as well. So when I talk about creating new words, we're going to talk about three major categories of words: nouns, adjectives, and verbs. The building blocks of any language, certainly for Hebrew. And we're going to break it down into each one and how we create new words, or at least, again, reverse, how we can recognize new words. So first off, we're going to talk about a very special category of nouns, right? This is as much grammar as it is practical things. I'm going to try to explain it in not too complicated grammatical ways. So first off, we have let me move this over here because I can't see it even myself. Okay. So first off, we have what we call in Hebrew, helchem bsisim. Okay, helchem bsisim are, actually I'll move that here. I see that I look at the screen differently as I move the video over. Okay, just talking to myself. Helchem bsisim. Helchem bsisim are what we call in English a blend word or a portmanteau, right? If you don't know what either of those is, it's simply this. We put together two words. It's not what we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is a compound noun, right? It's not schoolhouse or doghouse. It's putting together two nouns to create an entirely new word, right? That is a combination of the two. Portmanteau is a word that was invented in the 19th century, but in the grammatical term, we call it a blend word. Okay, and give you some examples here. The classic one in English, by the way, I'm sure many of you know this, and we also have it in Hebrew, is smog, right? What is smog? It's the combination of the words smoke and fog to create something that's a different weather phenomenon from smoke or fog, right? Smog is its own thing. In Hebrew, we actually also have the word smog. It's in Hebrew called alpiach, and it's the combination of the words arafel, fog, and piach, which is soot, right? Smog is the classic example of a portmanteau or a blend word, where we take two nouns, put them together in some combination to create a completely different noun based on the meanings of those two words. Hebrew, we do that, and we're very specific in Hebrew whether the word is an equal combination of the two words or it's a bit and piece. Let me make some examples. A lot of these words you already know. Okay, here's a great example. As you see here in row 4, we have a couple extra columns for those of you who've joined us in the past. For Café Oleh, you see I've broken this down into the Hebrew and the English and transliteration, but also examples. For each type of new word creation, I'm going to give you plenty of real-time examples so you can see how this works. Great example here is row 4. When I'm talking about a helchem bsisim, a blend word or a portmanteau in Hebrew, which is called maleh. This category words that are maleh means that we take the full root, the full spelling, excuse me, of each word that comprises this new word, and we put them together. So the word kolnoa, you all know this word learning Hebrew, right? Kolnoa is cinema. Okay, whether it's the movie theater, cinema, the entire industry of film, this is the word in Hebrew, kolnoa. And kolnoa is a portmanteau, is a blend word that is comprised of the words kol and noah. Kol means voice, and noah comes from the verb lanua, to move. Right, so a moving voice. Just like how in English, the original films were called moving pictures, right? You've probably heard that before. Picture motion society, right? It's called that for a reason. It's the combination of the two things. In Hebrew, though, we focus on the voice, right? So kol noa. Cinema is the moving voice. Take another one. One of the most popular sports in Israel, basketball. Basketball in Hebrew is kadur sal. Kadur sal is comprised of the words kadur, ball, and sal, basket. Right? Sal, like when you go to a supermarket, is the thing that you carry around in your hand, as opposed to an agala, a cart that you mow down people with when you get very impatient in the supermarket. Kadur, ball, sal, basket. Ball plus basket or basket plus ball, basketball. Okay, another great one, chaydak. Chaydak is the modern Hebrew for bacteria, coming from the word chay, an animal, or something along those lines, something that's alive, and dak, something that's very thin or small or slender, right? You put those two together, a thin, small life, bacteria. And finally, the very popular um, snack rather in Israel, bisli, right? Bisli, we all know, we all have our personal favorite flavors. By the way, if it's anything other than grill or barbecue, don't throw a party and invite me. Um, Bisli is a trademark name, right? And there's a lot of trademark names in Hebrew in modern Israel that are portmanteaus. For example, Bisli. Bisli is comprised of the words bis and li. Bis is a bite, and li is to me or for me. So a bite for me, right? Because it's little snacks, right? The idea is it's little crunchy bits that you eat. Bisli, a bite for me. That's how the name came around. These are examples of what we call helchem bsisim maleh or mleim, right? These are complete portmanteaus, meaning that we take the entirety of the words that comprise the new word and put them together. The next few words are what we call helchem bsisim chaserim, or simply chaser. These are when part of one or both words get truncated, get shortened in order to create a new word. Here's some great examples. First off, the word for duck. The word for duck, the bird, duck in Hebrew is barvaz. Barvaz comes from bar, a meaning wild, and avaz, which is a goose. So a wild goose, literally a duck in Hebrew is a wild goose. That's how the word came about. Okay, barvaz. Ramzor. This is the classic word that's always used when we describe this category of nouns in Hebrew. Ramzor is the combination of the words remez and or. Remez usually means a hint or a clue, but can also mean an indication, right? So an indication plus light, right? Something that's indicating something to you via light is a ramzor, is a traffic light. Okay, traffic light, traffic stop, however you call it in your respective countries of origin. Ramzor is that red, yellow, green thing at intersections that hopefully you and your fellow Israeli drivers will obey, or perhaps not. But ramzor is a traffic light, whatever you call it in your respective country, combining the words indication and light. Let's keep going. A very important word in modern day life in Israel, kaspomat. Kaspomat is an ATM. In English, ATM stands for automated teller machine, right? Same thing in Hebrew. Kaspomat comes from the two words kesef, money, and automat. Automat is one of those early 20th century words, automaton, right? A machine that takes the place of a person. Back in the old days, they called it automaton, right? So those two words together give us kaspomat. And finally, because I talked about brands, we talked about Beasley. Here's another great example of a brand that is itself a helchem bsisim, is a portmanteau. Israel, right? Many of you have been either flying on Israel or understanding that to fly in and out of Israel right now is only able to be done on Israeli airlines, El Al, Alkia, and Israel. I myself am visiting family in the United States for pre-planned family events. To fly out, I flew El Al, right? But one of the other options is Israel. Israel is the combination of the words Yisrael, Israel, and air, right? So just like we say many other um, uh, airline companies in the world are Air something, right? Air Canada, Air France. Same thing in Hebrew. Israel is Israel Air. Combining those two together. You've probably heard a lot of other ones combining the word Israel with things. So Israkalt. Israkalt is one of the popular credit card companies in Israel. Um, there are many other ones that you can use with Israel that you hear as the name of company brands, right? So these are just examples of one category of how you create new words in Hebrew called helchem psisim. Helchem, by the way, literally means soldering, right? What is soldering? It's taking two pieces of metal and fusing them together, usually with something hot or a flame or something of those kinds, right? So we're soldering the bases of words, right? Psisim are base, is literally base, just like it sounds. Okay, so we either take two words and use them in their complete spelling to put together to create an entirely new word, or we take bits and pieces, right? So like Barvaz or Ramzor or Kaspomat or Israel, you can hear in them, and as well as the spelling, you don't see the complete spelling of its two components. It's truncated to create a new word. Okay, let's get to another category. Another category you're probably the most familiar with in Hebrew is smichut. Smichut is either translated in English grammar as the construct case, or simply put, compound words. Smichut is a very, very integral part of Hebrew grammar. Whenever we're creating new words, this is one of the most popular ways, especially nouns, creating new nouns instead of a portmanteau is a smichut. And it's simply putting two nouns together to create a new concept that is based on those two, just like we talked about with smichut, but excuse me, with the portmanteau with elchem psisim. But the difference, right? Elchem psisim, I just said, translates to soldering the bases, meaning you're fusing two different words into one. Smichut, however, is combining two nouns that stay separate, meaning that they are spelled as two separate words, but together their definition is one. What's a great example? As we see here in row 8, Beit Sefer, right? We're taking the words bait and Sefer. Bait, house, Sefer, book. Literally, book of the house becomes a school, or the old school way we would say it to make it even easier for us to understand, a schoolhouse, right? Beit Sefer is a schoolhouse, or simply a school. We take the two words, we keep them separate, but together they create a new concept, a new word. Beit Sefer, school. Okay. Now, when you are creating these words, as we say, this specific definition of smichut is called smichut regila, where all we're doing, it's regular smichut, literally, which means that we're keeping these words together as two nouns. We're not adding anything as a to break these apart. The only thing that we can add, as you see here as another example in row 8, is the definite article ha, right? Indicating specificity or a proper noun. In this case, Beit Hanasi. Okay, so Beit, as we said, is the construct of bait. When we're when we're using the word bite, and we'll talk about this in a second, just a minute, of certain words that change their sound or their spelling. Bite is one of them. Bite, when we're turning it into a smichut, turns into beit. Okay, and the word nasi means president. If I want to indicate not just any president's house, but the president's house, whether it's in Israel, which is in Jerusalem, in the United States, in Washington, D.C., and so forth, we need to say Beit Hanasi, right? The definite article ha comes at the beginning of the second word in our smichut, right? We talk about smichut as usually two nouns together. Sometimes it can be more, but it's usually two nouns. In this case, bait and nasi. Bait, house, nasi, president. So if we want to say the president's house or the president's residency, We have to say Beit Hanasi to indicate a very specific president in a very specific house. Those are the only two ways we can create, excuse me, we can create a compound word just using nouns. Beit Sefer, a school. If I want to say the school, how would I say it? Beit HaSefer, right? The ha is on the second word. Okay, Beit HaSefer, the school. Beit Sefer, a school. Beit Nasi, a president's house. Beit HaNasi, the president's residency. Okay, specificity equals ha equals on the second word. Now, that's what we call smichut regila, where all we're doing is nouns. What we call it in Hebrew is smichut miforeket, or deconstructed construct case. It's a little complicated to say in English. It makes sense in Hebrew. This is the form you probably are even more familiar with when we simply use the word shel. Shel in Hebrew means of. It's the same idea, right? Instead of saying the president's residency, Beit Hanasi, you could also say Habayit Shel Hanasi, literally the house of the president, right? It indicates and conveys and communicates the exact same thing. The only difference is that Beit Hanasi is considered as one official title, right? In Israel, where the president resides in Jerusalem is called Beit Hanasi. You could also indicate Habayit Shel Hanasi, but you would still have to specify a little bit more. If you don't want to use smichut regila, where you're just putting two nouns together, you can always use the article shel. It's much less popular in modern Hebrew for a reason we talk about all the time, right? In modern Hebrew, also in classical Hebrew, also in all Semitic languages, the preference is always for fewer words and fewer syllables and fewer letters. The more concise you can be with the sounds that come out of your mouth, the better. And it's considered more favorable and more preferable. Same thing here. Instead of saying Habayit Shel HaNasi, that's 7 syllables, you can simply say Beit HaNasi, 4 syllables. 4 syllables will always beat 7 syllables in modern Hebrew. Again, anytime you can use fewer syllables, the better in Hebrew. Same thing here. Okay, so in the deconstructed case, you're also going to see something very common, especially in literature, and more importantly, in journalism. If you're reading the news in Hebrew, you're going to often find this construct. Beito shel hanasi, right? Where now we have 3 different things happening at once. We have the construct case, right? Beit hanasi. We've added the shel of, right? So it's now Beit shel hanasi, but we've also added the possessive suffix o. And this is to indicate and to clarify to whom is the house, right? So if it's unclear, and it can be unclear, just like in English, just like in other languages, the relationship between 2 objects, because we're talking about nouns here, right? If it's unclear, this construct case makes it abundantly clear. Beito shel hanasi, literally his house of the president. The his is referring to the second noun in this construct, right? So if it's unclear to whom we're referring this house, it is making it clear nasi, which is masculine, is further emphasized by the suffix o, right? If it was a female president, it would be Beita shel hanesi'ah. Okay, this is used to further emphasize the connection between these 2 nouns, and it's only used in this deconstructed version where we use the word shel. You'll notice in the regular construct, Beit Hanasi stays the same. Beit Hanasi, or if it was a female president, Beit Hanesi'ah. We don't add anything else between those 2 words other than the definite article ha. That's it. And the other one, we can add all sorts of things. Habayit shel hanasi or Beito shel hanasi. Okay, you'll hear again, Beito shel hanasi is very common in journalism where clarity is destiny. They have to be as clear as possible using as few words as possible. Excuse me. Okay. And as I talked about before, there are some spelling differences when we do smichut, when we have two nouns together that stay separate spelling-wise but create a new word. So for example, the word simcha. Simcha means happiness. When simcha is the first of two nouns together, for example, the holiday Simchat Torah, simcha, the hey at the end of simcha becomes a taf. Okay, and this is for all words that end in the letter hey, just like simcha becomes simchat. Okay, it becomes a taf. That's why it's simchat Torah. Okay, a couple other examples when the first word is masculine and turns plural. So if I want to say not just thinking about the news, matos krav. Matos krav is a combat plane, a combat airplane. Matos is an airplane. Krav is battle or combat. Okay, so matos krav is a combat plane. Metosei krav are combat planes. Okay, it's the first word in this construct that becomes pluralized, and instead of metosim, it becomes metosei, right? If I were saying the planes of combat, literally, hametosim shel hakrav, in which case everything stays the same. We add the word shel and it's good. Again, though, modern Hebrew doesn't work like that. You can't always use the shel. It doesn't make sense, first off, aesthetically, but also because these constructs, compound words, just like in English and other languages, become words themselves, right? We no longer say house of the book or the schoolhouse. We simply just say school in English, right? Same thing in Hebrew. Metosei krav, combat planes. Okay, so the first word, if it's masculine, will have e instead of im at the beginning. And then two words that are used a lot in creating these compound words, bait and yom, change also their sound. So instead of beit sefer for a school, if you want to say schools, bate sefer. Okay, and the other exception to all of this, or the special spelling and pronunciation, is the word yom. Yom instead of yamim becomes yemei. Okay, yemei chofesh, vacation days. Yomei huledet, birthdays. Okay, so again, if the word is going to be pluralized, it's the first word in smichut, and if it's going to be definitive, meaning the, it's going to be the second word. Okay. Let's move on to some other how to create new nouns. Okay, these were probably the most complicated of what we're talking about, because instead of adding something simply to a word, a prefix, or as you're going to see, a lot of suffixes, we simply put two nouns together in a very specific format. Either we fuse them together, we solder them together, or they stay separate, but they have a unified meaning together. Now we're going to talk a lot, pretty much only with regards to nouns and adjectives, about suffixes. Suffixes are any number of letters that we add to the end of a word to create something else. Okay? Language arts reminder for those of you who needed it. So let's talk about the suffix, or in Hebrew, siomet. Siomet comes from the verb lisayem, to finish, to end, to complete. So the siomet in Hebrew is a suffix. Okay, so the siomet ut translates to the English ism, ness, or ship. For example, the words tzionut, Zionism, right? We take the word Zion, Zion, and we add ut to the end of it to create Zionism. Yedidut. Yedid is a friend or an acquaintance. Yedidut is friendship, the act of being friends. Right? These are all nouns, right? Zionism, philosophy, friendship, a state, as well as another state, bdidut. Bdidut takes the word boded, lonely or alone, and then adds the ut at the end to create loneliness. So as you see here on the left-hand side of row 12, ism or ness or ship at the end of a word in English corresponds most of the time to the same suffix ut in Hebrew. All these words, by the way, are feminine. That's what the F in parentheses indicates. So tzionut, yedidut, bedidut are all nouns created from existing words tzion, yedid, or boded, or badad, lonely, alone. Okay, let's look at another common siomet suffix, tzia. Tzia is the equivalent in English of tion, shun, or sion, shun, right? So civilization, the very non-Hebrew word civilizatia, right? We simply take the word civilization, we turn it into Hebrew pronunciation, but that ending ends up being tzia, right? The same thing as tion, sion. So civilizatia, civilization. Let's look at some other common suffixes before we move on to adjectives, which will be the quick example we have here. A very common one. Okay, and we're going to get to, you're going to see there's an example. Sorry, just one second. I actually want to switch these around so you see them right next to each other. X. Perfect. Okay. View full screen. Let's talk about one of the most common ones. When you add at the end of a word, E. E is going to be your biggest friend when we're talking about creating new nouns, and as you're going to see in a little bit, also adjectives. E is a very common way, and by the way, in all Semitic languages, to turn a noun into an adjective or turn a noun into something even more specific. In this case, talking about a person's nationality. Okay, Gever Briti, a British man, meaning he holds British citizenship. When you add the siomet E to the end of a nation's name, or you simply truncate the nation's name and add E to the end, it becomes the example of ish, right? So this is, for example, let me write it here. Sorry, just a second. This is ish, N, is, all the different ways we indicate someone's nationality as an identity. A British man, Gever Briti, okay? And a female nationality indicating the same thing. We take the name of the country Germania, Germany, and the way we indicate a woman who is German is Germania. It sounds very similar to the name of the country. It just has a slightly different vowel and spelling. So instead of Germania, Germania, right? So Germania, you can hear it also. The emphasis is on the second to last syllable. Germania, the emphasis is on the last syllable. So if I'm saying the name of the country, Germania, emphasis second to last. Germania, meaning a female German citizen, is on the last syllable. Okay, so I, iya, iyim, iyot at the end of words often indicate the same thing in English as ish or an or is. Some other nationalities, depending on the spelling of the name of the country, are I, ait, aim, ayot. Most classic one, especially for many people on this call, Amerikai. Amerikai, Amerikait, Amerikaim, Amerikayot. When you hear Amerikai, it's referring to a person. We're going to talk a little bit about a thing in a second. I hope it's there. It should be in a second. Yeah, it's down there. Okay, right? So when we're talking about a person of American ancestry, citizenship, whatever, origin, Amerikai. That kai at the end, that I at the end, will always indicate we're talking about a person. So male Amerikai, female Amerikait, Amerikaim, Amerikayot. Again, this is based on specific countries. You'll hear this more often and not to know which one to do. Another classic one, especially because we have so many Jews of origin from Tunis. Tunis is Tunisia, both the name of the country as well as the city in Hebrew, and we have many Jews both in Israel and around the world, of Tunisian origin. So in English, we say Tunisian, right? In Hebrew, Tunisai. Tunisai, or in this case, as I wrote here, Tunisait, the female version, Tunisaim, Tunisayot. Okay, there are a couple other nationalities as well as professions that do this. For example, a profession that uses this ending is an itonai. Itonai is a journalist, coming from the word iton, a newspaper. So from newspaper, the person who works on a newspaper is an itonai, a journalist. Amerikai, Tunisite. Okay, let's look at some others. Ist or YST at the end of a word. For example, an analyst, right? An analyst is an analyst. Gitarristit is a female guitarist, right? Analyst is a male analyst of any background or in any topic. Gitarristit is a female guitarist. So we've taken, in this case, the English IST or YST at the end of the word to indicate someone's profession or their ideology, adherence, whatever it may be, and we've adapted it to Hebrew. So ist, istit, istim, istiot. When you hear that, it's the same thing as in English, ist. Okay, here's another classic one you're going to see. I'm not going through all of them, by the way. There's many more. There's many more definitions for each one. These are the most common ones you're going to see on a day-to-day basis. The ending on. On can mean a lot of different things at the end of the word, but most commonly, it's what we call the diminutive. It's when you want to make something small. So for example, a yeled is a boy or a child. A yaldon is a small child or a small boy. Yalda is a girl. Yaldonet is a small girl or small female child, however you want to define it. Same thing here. Machshev is the modern Hebrew word for a computer. If I add the diminutive to machshev, I get literally little computer. What's a little computer? A calculator. Okay, calculator. Okay, how we say the word calculator in Hebrew is literally a small computer, which in many ways it is, right? So machshev is computer. We add the suffix on, and we get calculator. Why do we add on and not onet? Because machshev is masculine, right? Just like yalda turns into yaldonet, because that onet is only used for feminine words. Same here, the on is only used for masculine words. Machshevon, calculator. Another one that has to do with professions is the ending nun. It's usually an or anit, aniim, or aniot. So for example, a kalkelan. A kalkelan is an economist. Taking the word kalkala, the noun kalkala, economy, and turning it into someone who is an economist, kalkelan. Okay, another one, mishpetan is a male jurist. Mishpetanit is a female jurist, as I wrote here. Okay, so an economist, male, and a female, and a jurist, female. Okay, that's how you recognize when you see the ending nun or nit or nim or niot. It has to often do with professions. So what you're looking at, for example, if you didn't know what either of these words were, right? I said, let's also think about this in the reverse. If I didn't know what either of these words were, what I would do is the following. Let's say it's kalkalan. I would put a break between the last letter and the rest of the word. And I would try to figure out what is this first word, kalkala, right? Because that ah vowel is still there. If I can figure out the word is kalkala, I can simply look it up in a dictionary and see, oh, kalkala is economy. And Jay just taught me that one of the ways we indicate professions is by this nun at the end of a word. So putting these two together, I get kalkalan, just like here, right? If I know that the word mishpat has to do with law, or I simply look it up and I type in mishpat, and I see it means sentence and all these other things, but it also means law. And Jay just taught me that neat at the end of the word means a profession, female professional. Put these two together, a female professional who deals with the law, a jurist. Okay, simple as that. Let's do another one. This one is not Hebrew in origin. This comes from Slavic languages, but you'll hear this all the time. Is the ending nik or nikit or nikim or nikiot? You've probably heard lots of words where you simply add nik at the end to it to create a profession or an identity through someone's profession. That's the best way I think of this one. The classic one in military slang in Israel, and we've talked about how slang a lot comes from the military in Israel, because the military is such an important part of our life cycle as Israelis, is jobnik. Jobnik takes the word job in Hebrew, with nik. Okay, and to combine these two together is someone whose profession is a job. Okay, so for example, and this is used in Hebrew for many years as a derogatory thing. So for example, a jobnik is someone who sits behind a desk as part of their military service. That's what it means in military slang, is someone who works in the Kiryah, the main defense ministry compound in Tel Aviv, or in some other setting behind a desk. Now, they might be doing something very important, but it's as opposed to someone who is kravi, someone who is combat, meaning that they're out in the field, right? A jobnik for many years was considered derogatory. But a jobnik could be someone who works in the very elite computing unit, 8200, unit 8200, which is largely responsible for Israel's high-tech scene. Okay, so jobnik combines the words job, the English word job, and nik. Another classic one is kibbutznik, or as I wrote here, kibbutznikit, right? A kibbutznik or kibbutznikit, feminine versus masculine, kibbutznikit is feminine, is someone who is a member of a kibbutz. Kibbutz plus nik or nikit, depending on their gender, means a kibbutz member. So a kibbutznik is a male kibbutz member, kibbutznikit, female. Nik, nikit, nikim, nikiot. Okay, and there are many other examples here. Okay, we are running out of time and I want to answer some questions, but we have two more categories to go and these should be very quick. So we talked about nouns. Nouns are the place we create a lot of new words. We talked about combining nouns together. We talked a lot about adding things to them. We're going to do the same with adjectives. Adjectives are really simple. Remember when I said that E, simply adding a yud to the end of a word can create both new nouns. It can also create new adjectives. In this case, E, it, im, iot sounds very similar to what we just talked about in terms of nationalities as people, but now we're talking about nationalities as objects. For example, an American invention, a German car, a Japanese machine, right? When it's an object, we're going to use I, it, im, iot. So for example, Americani, as opposed to what we said before, right? If I say, because I am as well as being Israeli, Ani Amerikai, I'm an American. When you hear that Amerikai, you know it's referring to a person, as opposed to Rechev Americani, a American car. Okay, Americani will always refer to an object that is American, as opposed to Amerikai, which refers to a person who is American. Okay, so Americani, Americanit, Americanim, Americaniot. Same thing with German. Instead of what we said before, it's Germani, Germanit, Germanim, Germaniot. This is, by the way, where we get the names of languages, right? So Germanit is as much the German language as it is a German object, a non-human noun, right? So a German car, a German whatever it may be, Germanit, if it's feminine. Okay, it, im, iot, depending on gender and plurality. That's super easy for adjectives. We're already done with adjectives. Move on to verbs and we're done. Okay, verbs. Verbs is a little bit more informal. Everything else I described right now is prescribed by the Academy for the Hebrew Language, is standardized how we create words in Hebrew. Verbs, however, are very slang. How do you create a new verb, right? It's usually you add a IZE at the end of a word or all sorts of other synonyms in English. Hebrew doesn't have a standardized way to create new verbs. However, it has a vernacular way. And when I say vernacular, I mean the larger population has created its own way. And it's very simple. You're going to take, first off, remember that when we talk about verbs, there are 7 different verb constructs. And if this is too advanced for you, don't worry, you're going to learn this later on in your formal Hebrew education. But we've talked about this before. They're called binyanim. There are 7 of them in modern Hebrew. And 2 of them are very commonly used and are the most adaptable to not only as many shorashim roots out there, but also to create new verbs. And these are binyan PL and hitpael. They're also related to each other. Okay, PL and hitpael. PL is often called considered the intensive form, and hitpael is both reflexive and reciprocal, the to get or to become something. Okay, let's take an example, because this is where you're going to hear a lot of new words. And some of these you've heard before all the time. Now you know how to create them. I put up here a classic one. Lifasbek. Classic is really relative here. Lifasbek. If you hear the verb lifasbek, you know, or you should know, it's created from the word Facebook. Facebook is clearly not Hebrew, but we're Hebraicizing the word by plugging it into the verbal conjugation form of PL, which its infinitive to do something is lifael. So we take that vowel construct, lifael, we plug in the word Facebook, and we try to essentialize or distill from the word Facebook its quote unquote shoresh, its root, but it doesn't really have a root in the Hebrew sense because it's an English word, and create lifasbek. Meaning, what do we have in lifasbek? If a native Hebrew speaker hears lifasbek, they immediately recognize, based on its vowel form, that it's PL, right? PL are verbs like lidaber, lifasbek. You hear that it's a very similar construct because it is, right? It's using the same construct as lidaber and many other verbs to create lifasbek. And lifasbek, the quote unquote shoresh of it, takes the essential parts of the non-English, non-Hebrew word to ensure its meaning stays there, right? So if I hear lifasbek, I know the word has to do something with a very similar sounding word, Facebook, right? Lifasbek is trying to distill the very important sounds that make the word Facebook unique. So lifasbek means to add someone on Facebook or to interact with them somehow on Facebook. A recent word. You have a lot of other words. For example, lifaxes. Lifaxes is to fax someone, taking the word fax and plugging it into this construct. Lisames, to send someone an SMS. Again, listen to it. Lisames. It wanted to ensure that you knew you were talking about an SMS by turning SMS into a quote unquote shoresh. Here's a classic one from the 50s and 60s in modern Israel. Lehiz dangef. Lehiz dangef takes hitpael and the name of the street in Tel Aviv, Dizengoff, the name of the first mayor of Tel Aviv, who has a very prominent street named after him, and turns it into the noun Lehiz dangef. In the 50s and 60s, Lehiz dangef meant to walk up and down Dizengoff Street, which was considered very fashionable at the time, the place to be seen. Nowadays, this has come back into vogue, using this term Lehiz dangef. But this is another example of how do we create a new verb by essentializing, by distilling the essential sounds of a non-Hebrew word, or if it's a Hebrew word, a non-verb, and turning it into a verb using one of these 2 forms. Okay, you can make up all sorts of things. Like I said, lifasbek. The classic one right now is, how would I say, we've talked about this word before, but let's You in your respective homes, think about how would I say to WhatsApp someone or to send someone a WhatsApp. Listen to the word WhatsApp. Think about what are the essential sounds in WhatsApp to make sure that you're communicating that, and then plug it into ledaber, lefaspek, lefael. If you said le WhatsApp, you'd be correct. Ani tzarich le WhatsApp oto. I need to send him a WhatsApp. Now, you could obviously say that in a lot of different ways, right? You can say, Ani tzarich lishloach lo WhatsApp. I need to literally send him a WhatsApp message. But le WhatsApp, to WhatsApp someone. And these are the ways, the most commonly popular ways that in modern Hebrew we create new words, nouns, adjectives, and verbs alike. We have a little bit of time. I see we have a bunch of questions in the Q&A. This again is your reminder. If you asked a question in the chat that was meant for today's class, this is your chance to write in the Q&A. Otherwise, I will be looking at the chat tomorrow. The chat is otherwise reserved for things that don't have to do immediately with this class. Okay. And by the way, if you asked a question in the Q&A, thank you, but I'm going to be doing some triage here, focusing first and foremost on questions related to this class, and then if we have time to non-related class questions. Has Israel been changing the vowels in modern Hebrew? Yes, it has, and in fact, we have an entire lesson, I think, it was a fun class to research, let alone teach, on YouTube. Please go to YouTube, Cafe Oleh Vowels. You will see a whole class just devoted to modern Hebrew and vowels. So wonderful class, definitely worth recommending to review. Is kolnoa also the word for silent film? I'd love to join or start a club for silent film lovers after I make Aliyah. Great question. Kolnoa is simply cinema. Think of it as the word cinema. I know we don't use the word cinema as much in modern English in 2023, but kolnoa is cinema or film. You could say kolnoa shaket or sratim shketim is usually the way we say it, literally silent films. Okay, but kolnoa is cinema. It includes both black and white and color, silent and the talkies, as they used to say, foreign and domestic. Kolnoa is the general one. Okay. Where does the et fit in constructs? Great question. Et is the word that you use before a direct object. You would never use et in between in the construct case. Okay, so for example, let's look at this again. The difference in these two forms of nouns, right, is the following. Look at these words over here. Okay, Beit Sefer or Beit Hanasi. Even though they are spelled as two separate words, they are considered one idea. Beit Sefer is a school, right? School is one word, even though in Hebrew it's comprised of two words, right? Et is used before a direct object. So if, for example, I want to say, I go to the school, or even better, because I have it up here as in the definitive, I am going to the president's residency. How would I say this? If ani holech means I'm going for male. Actually, no, that doesn't work because it's not the direct object. I see the president's residency. Okay, it needs to be a direct object in order to use et. If I want to say I see the president's residency, ani ro'eh is how we say I see. Et beit hanasi. Ani ro'eh et beit hanasi. I see the president's residency. Again, et is used before a direct object. Beit hanasi is one object, the president's residency. So to say, I see the president's residency, ani, I, ro'eh, ani is the subject, ro'eh is the verb, see. The entire object is Beit Hanasi. So therefore, it's Ani ro'eh et Beit Hanasi. Okay. Is smichut really used in spoken language? It really is used in spoken language, and even more so is this construct, beito shel hanasi. It's used all the time, and that will really, if you think shel is going to make it easy on you folks, having the possessive suffix used all the time on the news is really going to confuse you. So just understand both of these terms are used all the time. But Beit Sefer, we never say Beit Shel Sefer. Okay, this is how common it's used in Hebrew. We never ever say Habayit Shel Sefer. We say Beit HaSefer. Very simply put, I know it's one extra thing to learn, and it's easier to lean on Shel because it's translating literally from English. And I get that. When you're learning a new language, you want to rely on the grammar that is your mother tongue. In this case, English. We don't have compound nouns in English like we do in Hebrew. We have words like schoolhouse, right? Or the president's residency. We don't always use the word of. But probably if you looked at statistics, we use of in English much more than we do in Hebrew to indicate the connection between two nouns. Okay, so yes, you do need to learn smichut. It is absolutely integral to Hebrew. Like I said, shel is one extra syllable that in Hebrew, the default is to take it out when possible. So therefore, smichut regila, meaning no extra words between the two nouns being constructed into one new one, will always trump. What about IVE words? Primitive, objective. Great. Same thing as in, this is another example. I didn't go through all of the examples of creating new ones, but if I want to say primitive, there are ways to say it in a proper, quote unquote, proper Hebrew word, meaning it's based on a shoresh and a mishkal, meaning it's entirely within Hebrew. Primitive would be kadmon, but in English, in Hebrew, you will also hear primitivi. It's simply turning it's more or less transliterating the English into Hebrew that's understood. So anything that ends in IVE is usually EV. Objektivi, objective. Subjective, subjektivi. You can always do that. That's another great example of a suffix. I see a lot of people didn't understand or didn't listen to me. Let me explain this again, folks. When we talk about the country Germany, the language German, and a female German. Those are three separate words in Hebrew. In English, we have Germany, German, German. In Hebrew, we have Germania, Germanit, Germania. Okay, very important, folks. Listen very carefully before you ask any more questions about this, because I tried to explain it. I understand this is difficult. The country Germany, the language German, and a person's nationality German, female. Germania, Germania. Look at how listen to how I'm saying it and look at my hand to indicate where the emphasis is. Germania is the name of the country, Germany. Germania. Germanit is the name of the language. It will immediately let you know we're talking about an object, a non-human noun. Germanit is the name of the language. Literally means it's standing for Hasafa HaGermanit, the German language. Okay, Germanit is short for Hasafa HaGermanit, the German language. And you can simply say in modern Hebrew, Germanit. And it's understood in the context of whatever sentence you're using, it's the German language. It's the equivalent of writing German with a capital G. That's all it means. Germania is a female German. Okay? Germania, emphasis on the penultimate syllable, name of the country. Germania, emphasis on the last syllable, a female German person. That's the difference between the three. Hope that clarified it. I see a couple of people asking that question again and again. Is one airplane matos or metos? Matos. Matos. Sioni Zionist. Ending is not the same as your ist, yst examples. And you're absolutely right. And that's why it's not my example here, folks. Again, this isn't going to fit everywhere. This is for you to understand two things. This whole lesson, let me explain that again. This lesson is here to explain both how to understand words you don't get. If you see a word spelled and you don't know how it's supposed to be understood or translated, much less pronounced, by looking at how it's constructed, especially its suffix, and the other part of it, how to create new words. Zioni is Zionist in English. I didn't say it's all flush modern. Hebrew is not based on English grammar. Let me make that also abundantly clear. I know we have a lot of fellow Americans on here. I come from a family of Americans. I know how Americentric we can think about things in terms of American English and whatnot. Modern Hebrew is completely disconnected from American English and the way we use it. In teaching language as a second or third or fourth language, we use comparison, right, to understand similar things, but it doesn't mean it all fits neatly, compactly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be separate languages. Sorry if that was a little too harsh. Zionist is how we say it in English. Sioni is how we say it in Hebrew. It doesn't mean they're all going to line up in a neat pattern. It doesn't work like that. But Sionut does, because ut, one of the ways we understand ut at the end of a word in Hebrew, is the English equivalent of ism, nes, and ship. What is the difference between a jurist and a judge? I love when people ask me these questions because it's the same thing in English. What's the difference between a jurist and a judge? Hebrew jurist is a mishpatan, a judge is a shofet. What the difference is between the two of those is outside the bounds of this class. Those are the definitions of those two words, not the actual word itself. Another person asking between the lawyer and the jurist. Again, same thing. Oleh din or olechet din is a lawyer. Jurist is a mishpatan or a mishpatanit. What the difference is, I let you all use a dictionary to figure those out in your respective languages. Without vowels, it's hard for me to tell when I am seeing a noun that is an ism and when it's the ending of a noun or adjective. There is absolutely a clue. It's called context. Zionut is Zionism. Zioniot, excuse me, would be Zionists, female plural. Context will always indicate things. Zionut is feminine singular. Zioniot with an extra yud there, and let me write it just next to it, right, as a blank, is Zioniot. Zioniot are female Zionists. Now, if you don't know how to pronounce either of these two, that's fine, but the context will make it abundantly clear. Because if the word that comes after or before these, right, because if this is, first off, you're recognizing, is this a noun or an adjective? You'll know that based on what the words are around it. And you'll know based on if it's plural or not. If it's not plural and it's feminine, it's probably tzionut, because tzionut is feminine singular. Zioniot is feminine plural. And I'll know this based on what's around it. So if it says nashim zioniot, if it's written like this, nashim zioniot, I know that's a noun and an adjective. Simply because nashim is women and zioniot is an adjective. It's modifying the noun, and because the first noun is female plural, the adjective has to be female plural. If, however, and this gets into what we just talked about with smichut, what's the smichut form of nashim? Nashe or nashot. Usually it's nashot. If I saw nashot Tzionut, the women of Zionism, however you want to define that, right? But I know this has to be smichut. Nashot is the form of nashim in the construct case, and tzionut is spelled as such. Tzioni, tzionit, tzioniim, tzioniot is the adjective. Tzionut is the noun. It's always going to be about construct, no matter how hard it may be to understand the meaning of the words. Context will always be your friend in Hebrew, in any other language. Okay. It will take a few minutes, of course, to figure out the context, but that is the answer. Okay, let me just take this out. Okay, time for I see people correcting my English pronunciation. As we say here in America, God bless your heart. I am not here to teach English. I'm here to teach modern Hebrew. So yes, Solder in America is pronounced solder. It is not a word I ever use on a regular basis. I had to dredge it up to teach this class. So thank you for correcting my English. I'm not going to be using this word again very in the near future, but thank you for correcting me for that. Finally, someone wants to ask, how does one say a happy Thanksgiving? Because it is indeed American Thanksgiving this week. I will teach you very quickly how to say happy Thanksgiving. Also, because as a fellow American, I've spent many years not only celebrating Thanksgiving in Israel, proudly so with fellow Americans, but also with native Israelis and people of other origins, as well as correcting people rightfully so, that Thanksgiving is an American holiday. It is not a Christian holiday. Many native Israelis would like to correct you otherwise. I have many a fight with that, and even just tell people, if you think Thanksgiving is a Christian holiday, you're welcome not to come to dinner, which is your loss, not mine. How do you say happy Thanksgiving in Hebrew? Let me write it here, if it'll let me. There we go. Okay, in Hebrew, the name for Thanksgiving is taking from its meaning, right? Thanksgiving. It's got the thanks in it. So we take the root, like we have the word todah and lehodot. Todah means thanks, lehodot means to thank. So the word for thankfulness, or the act of thanking in Hebrew, is hodaya. It's a word that already exists in Hebrew. We take the word hodaya and we turn it into the name of the holiday. So Chag HaHodaya. The ha, by the way, at the beginning of the word is optional. You'll hear both Chag Hodaya or Chag HaHodaya. Either one is acceptable in modern Hebrew. The holiday of giving thanks, the holiday of thanking, literally, Sameach. Just as we say, remember we talked about life cycle events a few weeks ago, where at any time you want to wish someone a happy holiday, you plug in the name of the holiday between Chag and Sameach. So Chag Hodaya Sameach, or Chag HaHodaya Sameach is how you would say it. So with that, it is way over time. Toda rabah. Thank you all for joining us for this week. You will get a copy of this class along with the spreadsheet in the next day or two. And we hope to see you back next week for another class. Two things, as we've been saying. First off, as we've been saying in the last few weeks, and I taught you before, bisorot tovot, meaning may we only have good news, which is a very appropriate and polite way to wish people when you are departing a meeting or a conversation or any kind of interaction between people nowadays. Bisorot tovot, may we only have good news to share. And for my fellow Americans, Chag Hodaya Sameach. May you all have a happy Thanksgiving wherever you are in the world. Toda lehitraot. See you all very soon.